world. Good afternoon, human family. I'm here again with my divine sisters. So grateful and delighted to be with our beloved Magenta, who is on her path to healing. We have Tara here from France, Laura from Colorado, I think. Montana, and Nina in the lovely Sedona. It's the 20th of January. And before we begin our share today, let's just spend a few moments in the heart space, getting centered, just to take 3 nice big breaths to nestle into the heart. And then we can share openly and authentically all the good stuff that's happening in the world. Oh, it feels so good to get centered in that very, very powerful heart space. And come back when you're ready. So we have so much to share today. And Tara, you're going to kick it off with some epic flip news, I guess, if you want to call it, with what's happening in the UK that you're aware of. So why don't you kick that off, and then we'll go around the table and we can share all the good stuff, because it does look like the Looney Tunes has met the Twilight Zone at the moment. We're living in a crazy cartoon. Well, why don't you kick it off, Tara, and share? And we'll have to, for the audience, of course, we're speaking in code, and any words that are spoken, I'll make sure I correct, and we'll use that in text so that this can stay up and reach as many of our beloved family as possible. So Tara.
I'm excited to be here with you guys as well. But I'm just going to share what I'm aware of, okay? Because I'm not going to say things as if they're facts, but as far as I'm concerned, they are, but somebody else might want to disagree with me. But to me, this is completely real. And I was sharing it with friends and sending them stuff, and they were like, no, this can't be real. And I'm like, it is, look. And sending them more, and they're like, oh my God. So it's been really exciting in the UK recently, because there was a fellow who was an ex-police officer some time ago, had collected an awful lot of evidence demonstrating very clearly the adverse effects of the jabby thing. And all the people that were involved in it. Now, our audience knows the kind of people we're talking about. So we're talking about media, we're talking about government, we're talking about everyone across the board, everybody that's being complicit in it and enforcing it upon people and children. And so he collected a huge amount of evidence. And then many people saw these videos, and he went to the police station and he showed all the evidence, and he reported it as a crime and we gave evidence to show the people that were committing this crime, and got a case reference number. Now, what's happened is other people are taking it upon themselves to go around other police stations in the UK. And they're actually demanding, they're finding like the constable in charge of the police station, telling them this scripted piece of information, including all the crimes that have been committed. They haven't named names. They've said, we've got 1,700 pieces of evidence, and this is the crime reference number. And it's happening in this area too, because it's happening in every area of the UK, and in fact, internationally. And we demand that you get involved and inform the local community by whichever means necessary to stop this lethal toxin being given to people and forced upon people, because it's, as we know, causing a huge amount of deaths and serious reactions. And that he's named it, he's called it, genocide. He's naming it. And or the police people going around to the police stations and naming it, and they're demanding that every police station in the UK starts supporting and helping with this enormous crime. And I'm finding that really powerful, because people, these are people who, I mean, I don't actually know their position, what job title they have, but they're clearly showing the information, the evidence to the local police stations, and making sure that each and every single one of them gets this information. And if they don't follow it up, that they're actually accomplice to the crime, and they have to investigate and not, try and mess it up, kind of thing. And they're very intelligent. They're putting it across really well. And so as far as I can tell, that's going to reach pretty much everywhere in the UK in the next week. And I think this weekend is going to be huge, massively. And also I'm seeing other people, veterans, school teachers, other kinds of people going out en masse with this information, with this crime reference number, and the fact that this crime is being committed, and there's proof. And they're using that to put public notices outside of all the centres that are administering the jibby jabby, and telling them that it must stop immediately, completely stop, and trying especially to stop the children from having it. And it's so exciting, because I'm seeing these people, and it's like, have you ever felt in your life, where are all the alpha men that are supposed to, it's not a good thing to think, but I have upon occasion, where are our alpha males? Where are they when they need
the lions?
And it's not just the alpha males, but it's like those people, but there are lots of that kind of, ex-servicemen, all kinds of people standing up, and these alpha men. And there's a group in Scotland that grew from 100 males. They're actually called the alpha men or something. From 100 to 400 in a week, and they're continuing to grow, and they're meeting up and dressing up and in black and going out on force to stop this as well. It's like that masculine energy, that alpha male that's saying no. And that energy, I've been really feeling it. I don't know about anybody else, but that final, like, you know what, I've been loving, I've been tolerant, I've been trying to communicate, I've been trying to, and then there's just this no more. And all this energy, and people are going out in their groups. And then what they're advising is people don't just kind of go, great, let's get a gang of us together and then go and try and shut these things down or make civilian arrests themselves. But they collect their own evidence. They report their own damages or the crimes that have been perpetrated upon them, and go and use this crime reference number to report their own crimes, and get the police involved and bring them, or advise them of elements of this crime that they need to be aware of. So I find that massively exciting. I was literally crying the other night with joy that this is happening, and I can share the crime reference number if people want to know.
Well, what I was going to ask, as you ladies know, I work with first responders here. I created a program for stress resilience, and are in touch with a number of agencies. If you could help me find all that information, get access to that, then I will share that throughout Canada where it makes sense. And maybe anyone who's listening, if they want it, do write in, and let's find a way that we can get this spread across the world.
Also, talking about Canada as well, gosh, I'm a little bit fuzzy. I just woke up from a nap before we came on, but I'm trying to think now, what is it, the natural justice system? What's it called?
Yeah, Kevin Annett won his court case in common law in Canada, and Trudeau, a few of the leaders, you don't even know who you can say now, were found guilty of genocide. Now that same individual is the fellow that is representing all of the residential schools, the Native community in Canada, where we have found over 8,000 buried children from the residential schools. And of course, our government is complicit. And that is all touching, it's all connected to SRA as well. Because Kevin Arnett has videos on his own website. I think it's called Something Without Borders. And it talks about that. But Magenta, you were saying that you're even noticing some of that in your area too, right? The shopping center or something, or?
Yeah, I mean, what Tara's saying is true. It really is happening. In a town close to where I live, where I have family living, I know for a fact that is going on, because my son couldn't get into the town was all closed down. And then when they went back to the town, the posters were put up everywhere. and the police had been spoken to, just as Tara's saying. And the group you mentioned about the men, I know someone who's a member of that group. This group are men who are very loving, kind souls, just ordinary men who just want to be at home with their wife and children and go to work and earn an honest living, who have, as Tara said, have had enough. They want to make a stand, so they're coming into that sovereign masculine power. What I will add to this, and I don't want to bring in anything negative, but I do think it's important to be aware of multiple levels. At the moment, the naughty overlords, whatever you want to call them, still do have quite a bit of power and control. So they're finding ways to hijack what's going on, or perhaps use it to their own advantage, or prevent it. So, for example, with a peaceful group of warrior men, and it hasn't happened yet, as far as I'm aware. As I said, I know someone in this group, and this hasn't happened yet, but they do have the resources to send in men of their own, structure, their own group, to infiltrate that group and then behave in a way that is going to discredit the group. They do that. So there's still little hijacks coming in. So the way I'm feeling at the moment is a very quiet inner awareness that I would not call at this point a huge sigh of relief or a massive celebration. We're not at that point yet. What's happening is great. And the Great Awakening is full on right now, just as Tara said, but they are aware of it. They saw all this years and years ago in their futuristic technology. And when they saw this Great Awakening, in every timeline, their agenda was, how can we stop it? And when they realized they simply could not stop it, it's in every timeline. It's an eventuality. It's an inevitability. They couldn't stop it. The only thing they could do was mimic it, try to control it. So what I'm saying is whenever there's something that looks like a crumbling of the old narrative, which it actually is, there's a hijack going on. They're using it. And so what I'm actually seeing is, for a while, we got this chess game going on. And it looks like we're winning, but it's still a 50-50 play out. And it's a hijack of our Great Awakening on every level. The Nine are calling this the false awakening, but a lot of people have misunderstood what that means and are thinking I'm being really negative and saying we're not going to win. No, this is just an interim period. Eventually, the Great Awakening is so great that they are not able to hijack it anymore. There is a time coming, and we're on the trajectory for it, absolutely, where we can absolutely breathe that sigh of relief and celebrate, because we will have the freedom of our planet back. But we're not quite there yet. It's a 50-50 chess game at the moment, is what I see. Laura, I haven't really listened to anything you've sort of said lately. I've been a bit sort of out of the loop, as you know, in recovery. Are you getting anything similar to this at all that I'm saying?
Oh yeah, the hijacking, definitely. The planetary aspects are just being used against us. So for me, the awakening is encoded in our DNA. It's encoded in these cosmic and earthly events that we are co-creating with, and it's just, inevitable. It's like a seed that is inevitably going to become whatever the instructions are within that seed to blossom into the flower and coding that it was given. So, I mean, this planet was seeded as an ascension planet. So all that's unfolding, and the astrology and all the alignments definitely back that up. But for every alignment or conjunction or event that takes place, there's going to be a hijacking or an inversion of it, and a psychological operation that's going to sort of put us in a frequency or experience of these alignments in a very disempowered way. So if we're going through a transformation cycle, but we're being encouraged to fear death and illness. I mean, that's the most broad example. Just the covering up of our mouths is the inversion of a time where we're supposed to be speaking truth and sharing information. And just all the different like false narratives that come into play are really, you know, like the hijack, because we're all going to experience the trauma and adversity and stress of our times: illness, injury, death, loss. We are all up against the same kind of thing. Question is, how are we responding? Do we give our power away more in the face of these challenges, or do we allow ourselves to initiate through these initiations and face, I guess, the gatekeepers or whatever is, you know, challenging us to move to the next level, to create an activation and an upgrade and a discovery. So every challenge is providing a beautiful opportunity for us on the planet to experience this awakening. But there's so many different threads and cords that are trying to pull us this way and that way and this way and that way. And it has profiled so many different types of individuals on every spectrum, spiritual community down to atheists and everything in between, religion and people that are consumed in the entertainment industry or polarized by the right or left in politics. So all these different subpersonalities that have been engineered are easily, you know, targeted through just all these different tactics that it pretty much hits everybody. It's like, and because the vastness of who they're targeting is almost like the whole human, you know, race, we in all walks of life, because we're all being impacted. We have to just come back to center and get closer to ourselves in the face of all of it, because it's wired into us to be able to unfold and blossom and be on this ascension timeline. But we have to maintain this clarity and discernment and these boundaries and this, you know, strength within, so that it can blossom from within ourselves and then link up into this greater unified field and collective consciousness. So anything that drops our frequency to, you know, argument or, you know, conflict, divide and conquer, doesn't matter what category of life it is, spirituality, disclosure, what we do with our bodies and our health and wellness and how we conduct our lives. I mean, it doesn't matter. We're initiating into this greater awareness of what it means to appreciate our differences and to hold a love and truth frequency regardless. And that's the sovereignty. And that is a ripple effect of a greater awakening. But I think people don't realize sometimes they're fighting for something, or sometimes they're a part of something that is very much the same game with different lingo and different, you know, it's the same pattern. It's the same, you know, kind of deal. New age deceptions, false wokeness, false awakening, false ascension timeline, you know, anything that harvests us because we give our power to it, or we create an identity around it to the point where it causes division and conflict. Like, we don't need to do that. Our differences are a blessing, and the love vibration and the truth frequency is going to bust down the dualities so that we can, you know, really integrate together and fulfill this global alchemy, which will turn all the weapons and all the darkness. It'll turn it around. It'll transmute it. And something unbelievable is going to happen, and it's going to touch all of those who might feel compromised, who might put something in, might have put something in their body that they're worried about. It's going to change the substance of all that. And we're going to nullify and de-weaponize everything and the mark of the beast. But we have to be willing to join together and not let anything hook into our best, and I'm going to stop here. We can't let anything like hook into what our intention is. Intention has to be way stronger than it's showing up. If somebody has an intention to want to help the environment, well, don't get caught up in the globalism, climate change agenda. If somebody wants to be an empowered female, be very careful of the feminist movements, all these infiltrations that have hit like every movement, every sector of life, every power structure. Let's call ourselves back and come here to our heart, and not allow ourselves to be played, whether it's our greatest fears or our greatest hopes. We don't have to have somebody else like guide it and direct it. And that's what I feel like we all hold together, is this sovereign flame of, we all want the same things as a humanity, but let's not try and create it through the filter or through the channels of these dark systems that are infiltrated and literally harvesting us and creating just as much of a false awakening as a false Armageddon. God, it's too early I'm sorry. I hope that came out okay.
Oh, that's perfect. That's probably a great segue. Go ahead, Magenta, were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I'm so glad that Laura has said that, and she has articulated what's happening so well. And I feel, I'm still in recovery mode, and I don't feel I'm articulating perhaps as well as I could, even though this information has come through as, a channeled transmission. I found some people get really confused with what I'm saying and irritated with me and annoyed because they want this awakening so much. And the minute you see the slightest evidence of the control structure falling, for example, what's going on in the UK right now and our, political system, it's like the minute that there's the slightest hint of a change, they're latching onto that and going into this premature celebration. And I've even seen beloved friends who are spiritual teachers writing things like, we've won, it's over, the narrative has completely collapsed. And I'm like, hey, whoa, yeah, we're on that path, but let's not celebrate just too soon, because if we do, we're lost, because they will use that. And we have got to be aware. We've got to find what Laura said, the right ascension timeline, the true Great Awakening, and it's mashed up together. And I think that's what Laura meant when she said about all these different aspects and layers that are happening all over. It's like the false timeline or the false awakening and the real one are in the same event. One group with, say, 20 people has the real awakening and the false awakening in that one group, because everything's got an infiltration. But within that, there is a shift, there is a change. And because the people are standing up and saying, look, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that, they are finding their power, they are finding their sovereignty, the overlord structure has been forced into changing their chess move. They've been forced into a retreat. They wouldn't retreat if they didn't have to. They'd be going full steam ahead. They have to retreat, but they're using that retreat as another step in their agenda. I mean, right now here in the UK, we're about to enter no restrictions as of next Thursday, nothing. The odd little sort of thing is left in the odd place. You might have to wear the cloth on your face or whatever, but most restrictions are going, and people are celebrating and saying it's over, it's the end of it. Aren't we doing well here it's England specifically, not so much the other parts of the UK, it's specifically England. Aren't we doing well? We really are, but this is a reprieve. This is part of the agenda. Yeah. There will come a time when it's real. It's not that we are oppressed forever, but I think this in many ways is worse. And this is why I'm not being negative, but I'm being cautious, because what I feel is, if you were constantly enslaved, then that's one thing. But if you're enslaved and then you're given a taste of freedom and you believe you've broken free out of your jail and like, yay, I'm outside, I'm in the sun, goodbye to my jailer, I'm free. And then they get you again. Isn't it worse the second time when you realize that freedom was, they were playing a game with you, like a cat, letting the mouse go, letting the mouse run under the bush. The mouse thinks it's free and then the cat grabs it again by the tail. That's what's happening. And I don't want to be negative, but that's what I see. Yep. And part of me, because I haven't really been watching other people and I'm getting such backlash from what I'm saying, which I knew I would, the Nine told me, They wanted me to say this, but they said you are going to get more negative backlash than you've ever had, because people don't want to hear this, which is why I asked Laura, because I know she gets similar information for me that I do. So I'm just really thankful that Laura has presented her perspective. And yeah, I'd love to hear what you all think of that, because whilst we can talk about the great things and the wonderful things, and that's absolutely there on the multidimensional level, it's fantastic, and we are going towards that, there's still this other stuff going on at the same time that we need to be aware of, so that we see clearly, we have clarity, we know who is who, we know what is what, we know that that's genuine over there, that really is the Great Awakening, the people really did that. But over here, like in the UK with our political situation, we've got actors playing a game. It was all part of the plan.
Yeah.
And I think you know who I'm referring to. And in my novel, this character's name is Borisio Johnstonian. This is a game. None of it's real.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to throw that in there.
If I could add, I know, Nina, you got so much to share. I just want to add there that my guides have shared that the darkness cannot learn. Darkness cannot learn. So that's one thing that we do have absolutely in our favor, is that we have the discernment and the truth. And that's why it's so important to go inside. Because if we wait for anything, if we wait to be happy based on what's going to happen out there, we'll be waiting a very, very long time, right? I think in a lot of ways, this is humanity learning about discernment and what's true, and to stop looking out there, to come in here, to come home for guidance. Because no matter what happens, I really believe in every fiber of my being that no matter what they do, we are going to know, especially if we're connected and working with our heart space, we'll know exactly what to do in that moment to counter it, to offset that. Because this is the love revolution, right? This is where love it's the end of separation, the end of the idea of separation. And Nina, you've got some good stuff. I know that you're just beaming to share as well.
Yeah, so, well, Magenta, I completely align and with your information, and Laura, your information, and it's exactly the same information that the Galactics gave me. And I was really amazed to go onto my channel and to see that all of the beautiful star seeds who in the past would have been hanging onto every single word that every truther was saying, or would have been celebrating this, every single one of them said, this is a false awakening. I can feel it. And I was like, wow, I'm so proud of us, because we've grown so much as a collective starseed group through this time of our solid discernment, that it's like we are unshakable. And so I feel like that's a huge part of this is, yes, they're playing cat and mouse with us, but can we still stand? And it's so funny that you said cat and mouse, because that was exactly the download that I received and actually wrote out. This is like we're being played with like cat and mouse. And can we stand in our sovereignty? And can we trust what Mother, Father, God is saying within us? Can we trust the feelings, the frequencies, our instincts, our gut instinct over what we're seeing outside of us, over what anyone outside of us is saying? And that's where we have to get in order to ascend. That's a huge aspect of the ascension. Within our Christed consciousness, that is Christed consciousness. So it's been really beautiful to see that I don't see a wobble going on in the field of the collective star seeds as I would normally see. There would be these massive amounts of wobbling and differences in frequencies. There's this holding. We're holding together. So I'm so proud of us. And I feel like a mother bear who's getting to witness all of us growing up. And it's just so gorgeous. So I just wanted to say that. On the other side of this, I've been experiencing so much galactic movement and information coming in, especially the Andromedans have been really working with me a lot here and with a lot of us here. We call them the purple people because they started showing up as the purple people for us. They're violet, but we call them the purple people. It's cute. And about 2 weeks ago, I suddenly saw like huge galactic fireworks over my condo apartment building and coming into my home. And I started feeling electric. I'm actually feeling it right now. It's been happening more and more. And the Andromedans and the Galactics came in and they said, okay, you're right next to a 5G tower. And I am. And they said, you've been placed here for a reason. And it's because your galactic ability is the reason, one of the reasons you're so sensitive to metals and sensitive to frequencies, and you have such an understanding of frequencies. You're a harmonizer. You can harmonize the frequencies. You're a superconductor of this 5D and higher frequency that is higher than the 5G, 5D and higher. And they said, a lot of the starseeds right now are going through what appears to be sickness because they're getting massively upgraded for everyone to start being able to be harmonizers and superconductors. And they were just showing me the most beautiful future visions and understandings. They said, you will do this and more in my name. Jesus said that. And the children of the light are bioluminescent. You're going to start glowing because you really are walking houses and temples of the light. And it's how you're going to start to recognize each other. You will be illuminating through your cellular DNA. And at first, only you will be able to recognize each other in this glowing manner. But then others, those who took the jibby jabby, will start to see you glow as well, because they will not be glowing. And I've had visions of this for so long where those that are not glowing are looking at the glowing people going, obviously there's something going on here. Obviously we are, they will be very drawn to us. We'll be like avatars are walking amongst us, and they will be very drawn to us. And they said, I went to the grocery store that day, and it was really interesting. That was right where the 5G tower was. And when I walked in, I saw massive grids, light grids. And they were like, it's coming from you. You're harmonizing the frequency in here right now. And I'm sharing this not because this is about me, because this is what's available and happening for all of us. And there's a reason why certain starseeds are planted right next to 5G towers, and why we are exactly where we're meant to be on the grid all over the world right now. Mm-hmm. And there was one person in that grocery store that was glowing. And I was like, oh my gosh, I saw their color. And they said, this is what we're talking about. And this is just going to be amplifying and amplifying. So while we do have this kind of, what I'm seeing is like a pause in the timeline before they come at us again with their next plan, which is pretty intense, by the way, we're also getting massively upgraded in a galactic cellular DNA to be able to be even, it's like in the timeline, we're way ahead of that. And we just have to remember that. And we are also shifting the timelines. It doesn't mean that their timeline isn't going to play out, but we are also shifting the timelines. We have the ability to do so. So we're so powerful. And it all is having to do with on the quantum field and the frequencies. And as our cellular DNA is attuning to these galactic frequencies, it's like we're coming out of the cages of our cellular DNA. And as we're doing that, it's embodying and it's changing the entire reality, which doesn't mean that some are going to not go through the 4D timeline. Yes, it's going to play out, but it doesn't have to be our reality. We're existing within a different reality within that. And that's what's been becoming very solidified within my own experience, and I'm witnessing is happening to the starseeds. I hope that makes sense.
Totally makes sense. Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of what, that's the thing, the override frequency. I mean, we're walking around like emitting vibration that is stronger and more powerful than the 5G. We're neutralizing it. We can de-weaponize all this stuff. As long as somebody is under the mind control, though, in the social engineering, that's the more concerning part. Once they pull themselves out of that and join with, this alignment to the organic ascension signals and the divine blueprint within, I feel the spiritualized body is going to be able to excrete and release the foreign substances of things like the jab, and it's going to change the way that energy is working in their being, because their mind is no longer captured by because it's such a multi-leveled thing. You know, it impacts the physical. It's trying to drag an individual into the hive mind, assimilate it into the AI. But once that awakening happens, once that frequency is found, that connection is no longer there. So the physics of the connection changes to the point where some real magic begins to happen, and we can really help those souls come home again to themselves and to the unified field of all of us, walking together in love and compassion.
What they're showing me is the radio station where we were tuned into the fear frequency, like as if you think about, you know, literally tuning into 92.5 FM radio or whatever, it's like we're being tuned into the truth frequency, the love frequency. And I think what you just said, Laura, is when they can break that cycle, snap out of that and change the channel. That's, I feel like when clarity happens, like, oh, I can see clearly now. I can make better decisions. I can discern truth. And
I think it'll help people that are dealing with spike proteins, because if they are vulnerable to this weapon system within themselves, you know, and we're all going to have to go through we're all going to have to go through it to a certain degree, and we've all been hit. But you know, I think it's also going to resolve that whole part of it. So the spike proteins.
I feel like ultimately we're on a planet of choice, or a realm of choice, depending on what shape you think the world that we live on. But it's a place of unconditional free will, and it's choice, and we have choice, and that's a God-given, creation-given aspect. And we can unplug at any time from all of it, because, you know, I've seen this for such a long time. I've just been in this for so long, as I know you guys have, where you can see all the truth, stuff called truth coming out, or stuff called spirituality coming out, or stuff called channeling coming out, or whatever's, you know, these messages from all over the place. And it's, you know, like Magenta was saying, it's false. It's a false spirituality. It's a false awakening. There's been so much falsehood on this planet for so long. It's not a new thing. And it is really important to be able to sift the wheat from the chaff and to know truth. And we're all hardwired to it. And it's really just having that choice of tuning in to what you know, or choosing to not tune in and be a victim and be in pain and be, you know, a victim to whichever false reality is playing out, whether it's labeled good or not good, you know, evil or spiritual and loving. There's bullshit on both sides. It's everywhere. And so, you know, we always say the same message. You have to be in your heart, and you have to, you know, from my perspective, unconditionally love everything, but have conditional proximity to what you want to be around. I can love everybody. It doesn't mean I have to be around all these people, you know, and you can choose and see and really unplug yourself. And what I've been seeing for many years, and I had another client like this today, it's as if people have kind of got into like a sticky spider web with so many strings attached that are holding them in their pain body, holding them in the matrix, let's call it. And it's like because they've been there for so long and being controlled, being manipulated, reacting to every little thing, you know, every little movement, every little tug of the string, there's a pain body reaction. And then the body gets used to the fear. They get used to, it's like a drug, like you're hooked on heroin or something, or you're hooked on, you know, sugar or something. It's like they almost don't want to come out of it and be sovereign and not be dependent on help me, fix me, answer my questions, do, you know, give me another something now. And rather than actually coming out of that cocoon or coming out of that sticky kind of web, because the moment they do, it's like they don't recognize themselves. There's an identity crisis, and then they're not getting the same chemicals in their body that they've been running on, and it's like a pain detox. It's like, I need my pain fix. I need my poor me fix. I need my I'm helpless fix. I need my I'm weak and I can't do anything and I'm a victim fix. And so it plays out on lots of different levels, as you all know. It's like it's a mental thing and it's a physical thing as well. So but when you make the choice and you make a clear choice, I want to carry on being in pain and being played and going along with, highs and lows, ups and downs. I think that's what you were talking about, Magenta and Laura, is not getting sucked in just because there's something good happening and go, yay, that's really brilliant, but not getting way caught up in it, like riding a wave and then getting dumped to the other side when you realize something else is actually going on, because then you're just being played. You're still stuck in it. You're still, you're still a victim of it. But to actually understand that we can, each and every single one of us, unplug. Everybody has the ability to choose a conscious choice. I no longer want to be suffering and in pain. I want to be who I am, not this false identity that I've been caked in my whole life. And I believe that that's me because this person did that to me and this person did that to me, but kind of almost break out of the cocoon, stop rotting inside the cocoon and come out and be the butterfly finally.
Plenty of evidence out there though, right? There's plenty of evidence out there. There's plenty of evidence if you look out there. Oh my gosh, there's nothing other than this vision. But like I think I heard Michael Beckwith say recently, if you don't have a vision for your own life, then it will be given for you, right? You become a puppet or an instrument of anything out there, and you find people will wait for something external good to happen so that they can be happy, not knowing that they can create that within themselves and then overcome that vision that they want. You go, no, thank you. That's not for me. I choose, to your point, I choose other. Go ahead, Laura.
Oh yeah, that's so awesome. Yeah, it's like the whole problem reaction solution isn't just for false flags. It's in everything. And like the addiction cycle you're talking about, this is an addiction matrix. It's here to harvest and siphon us and create this dependency. And that's why I always compare it to like just being in an abusive relationship. I mean, and sort of the the way that one kind of gets addicted to the intensity of it all, and how that falls back on somebody's sense of self-worth. Like, is your self-worth defined by something outside of you, or is it defined by something within you, based on what you value, based on what you honor as sacred, and based on your willingness to be a guardian to that and not allow anything to penetrate or get into that space? Because when that begins to happen, when that boundary is there and the auric field is strong enough, that energetic circulation begins to change the way our brain and neurons fire and just nervous system flows with this transformative process, to the point where it lights up things like bliss and exaltation and the glowingness that you talked about, Nina. And so to break the addiction cycle is to say, when there's a problem, the reaction isn't going to seek a false solution, because the false solution in society are the most damaging things. They make matters worse, even though it seems to be okay. It's like a quick fix. Like, oh, you're depressed, here's a pharmaceutical. No, if you're depressed, sit with it, breathe with it, write, create, understand it, ask it what it wants, because it's got some really important messages for you. Or if there's, just any, sort of challenge or adversity, do we react and freak out and then look outside of ourselves? Something else has the answer. I mean, that's where the trap is. And that's where I think the addiction cycle is, where the ups and downs go, where we feel like, okay, I'm better, or this is sustaining me, or in my neediness, somebody validated me. Well, what if that all gets ripped away? We have to learn how to fall back on ourselves and be like, okay, I've got everything I need within me to begin to blossom, rebuild, and reconfigure and reset, so that what I'm emerging as is better than what was there before. And instead of reading into the pain of it all, because transformation comes with pain, and over analyzing it, we breathe through it. And we, it's like if we throw up, we want to flush the toilet pretty quick. You know, we don't have to analyze it. It's just like, this doesn't belong. It needs to be purged. Let's let it go, because something beautiful is going to emerge. But very often people get stuck in the birth canal, or they're stuck in the cocoon, and they're overthinking it or analyzing it to the point that they're fearing it. They're fearing the very process of it and what it could do, both in the fear of being empowered and sovereign, because it's unfamiliar, even though it's a reunion and it's coming home, versus, you know, fearing everything that gets thrown to find that false solution from another system that's infiltrated and controlled to be that false savior. And so I think the false awakening is looking outside of ourselves for false saviors, even if we say, oh yeah, we're not going to be saved, but we might be saying it, but we're still playing into it, because it's like, oh, there's good news, you know, like they'll throw us a bone, but then rip it away from us, because we're still in that problem reaction solution. Because it's all, at the end of the day, a major psychological operation, in the most intricate like way, because it targets every single facet. And like you said, the minute we unhook and we allow the flow to just happen within us, it does the repair work. It takes us out of the problem reaction solution, and it helps us to be facing adversity as a spiritual warrior, as an athlete that gets stronger and more aware of like obstacles being an opportunity to gain self-mastery, instead of be victimized and played and given, you know, solutions that, you know, end up creating more of that addiction that we don't need.
Exactly. What she said.
What she said.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was
Yes,
just
ma'am.
going to say, what Tara's saying about the unplugging is really showing where the true great awakening is, because that unplugging is it. And I think that is happening big time right now. And that's what you can celebrate, even if those people are unplugging and, like Laura said, they're unsure, they're feeling the pain of transformation. They were trying to cling on to what they had. They didn't realize that this was something different. They thought the life that they had was everything real. And so everything seems to fall around their ears when they do unplug. But that is happening now. And it's being pushed more and more and more with all these people. And everything you were saying at the beginning, Tara, about these groups and the things that they're doing, even if that is being hijacked, and at the moment it looks as though there's a clear path around this, that is something to celebrate. So it's I feel finding where it are these things that we can celebrate, and actually that then gives us a mirror to the whole sort of galactic path of light, rather than the, you know, hijacked pathway. It shows us our journey into the new earth, rather than them trying to take us into this world order new situation. So the unplugging, I think, is the great awakening. And I think that is happening hugely right now. And that's a major theme throughout this entire year, that unplugging for so many people.
Yeah.
If I can just say what I was celebrating about that, sorry, Nina, what I was celebrating about that was seeing these people saying, this, I know my role now, and I'm going to do this, because like Nina was saying, what your role is, and each of us have a different role. I think Starseed Transmissions talked about this many years ago. Have you ever read that book? It came out, God, 25 years ago. Starseed. Oh, it was absolutely brilliant. I read those a long time ago. And he was talking then, and various other things that I was reading about the different roles that we're all playing, that we kind of parachuted into this dimension. And I was like, right, I'm placed here. Like you were saying, Nina, you're placed there with the 5G tower because you have a role there. We're all placed in certain areas. So when I'm seeing people going, this is my role, and they're just going, I see an activated real human being. I'm not looking at people going who are caught up in the fear and kind of running around being part of the played narrative, or being part of the manipulation. Personally, what I'm seeing is the celebration that comes from me is when I'm looking at this human being who's like, I'm doing my thing, and anybody else that's feeling this is what we're going to do. And this is what they're doing together. And it's with so much care and love. It's not like anarchy, because there's also massive consequences to this. And I do think it's important that people do follow up this crime number and continue with this case, because on a certain level, that's an aspect that needs to be covered. And of course, there's multi-dimensions to it. There's multiple layers to it. Yeah, I've forgotten what I was going to say next.
Well, we get to show our power, don't we, through that? If everybody contacted the crime number, on the other end, on the receiving end, at first, they might see that as just some, small group that have managed to get some kind of legal doorway in, whatever, let's humor them. But then when you get all these calls, you're like, hold on a minute, this is far bigger than we thought. And of course, you've got the government telling people that there are, if you will, 5 million people who won't do this certain thing. But we know the number is like 3 times as much as that. And that's just in the UK. So when I was talking about people falsely celebrating, I wasn't necessarily referring to your celebration of this at all. What I'm seeing, I'm not just seeing the individuals that are finding their truth and finding their mission. And I think that's wonderful. And I am seeing that. And as Nina said, there's a real solidarity within the truth and spiritual communities, individuals who are seeing what's going on. And that to me is like 80-90% of the spiritual community. But I am still seeing this smaller group who are lost with that, who are awake, and they think that right now, this is the Great Awakening. Everything is collapsing. Everything's fallen apart. And when they watch things on, television or on YouTube videos or wherever they see their information, they see what they see in front of them. They think is real, and they don't realize that it's part of the play out and it's part of the act. So they celebrate prematurely, and those people will be in for, a worse shock later down the line when things change. So I feel for those people. And then, of course, there are the people who are still in that narrative, who are still being played by that narrative, who don't realize that they are being played by that narrative. And that's still quite a substantial group of people. So there's this great awakening that's sort of rolling in all of these different ways, and everyone is at different stages. And I think, for us, we've been prepared for this for so long. We unplugged at a time when things were relatively, if you will, peaceful on the surface. But the Great Awakening is the unplugging in the middle of chaos. So it's a different journey for them. And I guess we're here to live by example and present what we've gone through. And we don't allow ourselves to have our happiness and our joy and our sense of peace to be dictated to by a certain date that is given to us. We can find that no matter what is going on. But there are individuals, even in the spiritual community, that aren't doing that. I've had people say to me, how can you be so... I get accused of being too negative and too positive as well. So how can you be so positive and loving and unconditional, fluffy, this, that, and the other, when I'm losing my job? If I don't take the what, I'm going to lose my job. I won't be able to support my family. So people who are worried and caught up in that would see me and all of us, all 5 of us, as, too positive. But then when you start talking about the hijack and what's going on the dark side, you've got a whole bunch of other people in the community, in the spiritual community, that would see us as concentrating on the negative. And one I've heard repeatedly over the last week is feeding the negative timeline. I've been accused of feeding the negative timeline, and I've seen conversations where other people have been saying that. But you don't feed the negative timeline by observing it and analyzing it and discussing it. You can talk about it as much as you want. You only feed it when you believe that it's so huge and so more powerful than you, that it puts you into this fearful state. That feeds it, and that's still part of the learning anyway. Even if you are feeding the negative timeline, that's all part of your learning anyway. As you were saying, Paula, it's about this huge learning experience, this initiation that we're going through. And that is really what this is. It's this galactic initiation, and it's really ramped up at literally the minute we hit 2022, I feel.
Yeah, it feels like this is the year of the real battle. But I want to go back to what Tara said and what is happening in the UK. That is giving a lot of people hope, because it's on record now that something is afoot and it's not right. And I think that once that crime number starts to be shared across the world, that is going to cause, like, I'm seeing a huge tidal wave.
Newspapers. They're printing it in
The
newspapers.
truth is out. See, that is, I'm getting goosies from that.
It's huge,
And
guys. It's
it is
massive.
huge. And then to go back to what Magenta was saying, you're not being negative by discussing it. You're being practical and helping people prepare. Like in a war, there's many, many, many battles. Some you have to retreat and regroup. Some you gain more ground. But we know that the war is already won. But I think the biggest war is within the self.
Yeah.
Are you going to continue to be puppeted, played like an instrument externally? Or do you completely unplug, just like the Matrix? What a perfect comparison, and bring it home. Because when we're home, that's where we get the guidance. That's where we hear the clarity. I know, Nina, you've been wanting to say something. This is such an awesome conversation.
Well, I think it's important that we understand that before the slave matrix and the channel and the role that you played in the slave matrix was created, that there's always been the Christed consciousness timeline. There's always been the God has already won, God is love timeline. And so the way that I see this is when starseeds came in, when children of the light came in, pretty much everyone I work with, and I've seen it in myself, and it's across the board, whatever your non-inverted role in the kingdom of heaven consciousness, Christed consciousness, God's matrix would be, is where you were attacked the most. And so the role that you've been playing, if you've been playing the shadow aspect of the feminine, or you were dealing with a lot of sexual abuse or rape, or, well, this is when you step into the kingdom of Christed consciousness, usually this is the healing that you have then to offer to the world. This is part of your role. This is part of your purpose. And so it's really important for people to understand also that when they unplug from the slave matrix, because a lot of people are like, well, what do I plug into? It's like you plug into the original organic matrix that is the matrix of God, which Jesus talked about. We are either living in fear consciousness, which would be hell consciousness, or you're living in faith consciousness, which is Christed consciousness. And when we live in faith Christed consciousness, it doesn't matter what. And of course, I'm very grateful for what's happening in the UK. I just need to say this. It doesn't matter what's happening in the UK. It doesn't matter what anyone else is saying is happening. When I faced the possibility of dying, and Magenta, I know it just happened to you recently, and I'm so grateful for that. I really realized that God, Goddess in me is in control of my heart beating and my timeline. And that as long as God, Goddess has me here, I have a purpose and a calling. But we have to get to that point of, I trust God, Goddess in me to take care of me, to provide for me, that it doesn't even matter what's happening outside of me. I'm so solid in my faith. It's unshakable that nothing and no one can take me out of that. And I know that that's what Source in us is wanting us to ascend into. That is 5D consciousness and higher. I mean, so much higher, but that's just the start of it. But that's what Jesus talked about when he said, I will come again through you. You will do this and more in my name. This is the Christed consciousness that we have to be seated in when we are unshakable. And so it's been awesome to see that actually what God is doing is taking every single attempt that they've thrown at us to demean us, to belittle us, to cause us to go into fear, to actually use it to make us stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. And it's just going to keep happening. And they're literally helping God grow an army of children of the light. So that's how I see this is, okay, well, whatever move they're about to make, it's just going to be used to cause us to be ready for even more of our galactic gifts to come online. Like the things that I know I personally couldn't break in my own life have been broken through all of this. I love who I am now more than ever before because it's not based on, well, I love myself because I go to yoga 4 times a week, or I love myself because of blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, real, true, unconditional, solid love, spirit love, which allows me to love you the same exact way and love us. And that is such a huge gift. So, okay,
No, that is perfect, because I mean, Tara, this is the gift that you provide to people, right? Is if they can't find a way to love themselves, that's where you help. I remember the day I fell in love with myself. I really do. I remember I looked in the mirror and I'm like, oh my God, I love you. And I was told, or twice actually in the last couple of weeks, I'm a completely different person than who my husband married. Completely different. My girlfriend told me that too. But can you look in the mirror and go, you know what, I would love to be my best friend. If I could have a best friend, I would like her or him to be like me. That's when you've kind of discovered how amazing love is. And when Tori, you were talking before, can you love everybody? It was inverted before, because I remember I would say, years ago, I really like that person, but I don't love them. But that's the inversion, right? You love them because they're part of source. You don't necessarily have to like them to come for dinner because you're not, they're not your cup of tea, but you love them anyway because they're of life.
Yeah. But when you have a society of people that don't understand what real love is, and they talk about, if you're just doing that because you want somebody else to love you, then you're really just loving yourself. And there's a lot of put down, there's a lot of inversion of the self-love. It's all over the place. Even with the best intention in the world, I read something recently from a very famous person, and in this book it was really slating self-love. And it's really interesting because when you really understand love, it doesn't not love anything. Love loves everything. There is no, well, I'll love you, but I won't love me. Or I'll love my face, but I won't love my hand.
Yeah.
And so when we say, you can only love others, I think, the way that you truly love yourself. Because otherwise, if you love yourself with condition, you're loving everything else with condition.
100%.
And if you've been loved with conditions, spoken or unspoken, a lot of them are very sneaky and very subconscious and even unconscious conditioning, then to try and kind of clean your act up and clean your conditioning away from yourself and come back to what true love is, that does take a bit of effort. It takes consciousness, it takes awareness. And when you really understand what love truly is, there is no separation between me and you and any other being on this planet. Not the good guys, not the bad guys, not the right ones or the wrong ones. It's everything and everybody, because we're all part of the same body. It's like saying, I love my boobs and I don't love my feet or something. It would just be stupid. It would just be stupid because it's the same thing.
Yeah, you never hear the sun say to the earth, you owe me. You never hear.
You better be grateful today or I'm not going to shine on you.
Yeah,
Say your prayers.
And that's so amazing. And that's really what's, unfolding, is the recognition of the fullness of all that we are, and the fact that we're multidimensional and we're beyond this physical, but this physical is a container for the multidimensional, for the spiritual, and anything else is going to create unwellness. In those times that we face unwellness, any kind of adversity, it's a chance for us to break through the fences and seals that are keeping us from these other strands of DNA. So every time we're going to have a breakthrough or go through initiation, we're going to be presented with a challenge. And that challenge is capable of liberating us so that we can discover the rest of ourselves and move beyond the personality matrix, which is very vulnerable to the mind control and social engineering because of the way our self-esteems and egos were developed and thrust into a negative ego construct that is polarized and never really centered in that 0 point. So once we, begin to do that and we begin to move into the soul and into the 5D throat chakra, speaking truth instead of spreading mind viruses, and really opening up to the soul essence
of what does it mean to be true to ourselves, which is to me a version of loving ourselves, because we're willing to be honest and truthful with what we're going through, then we live, on this soul level, and the synchronicities fall into place. We meet soulmates and soul family, and a whole different sort of set of experiences begin to light up. Even if we lose that job, even if we lose that partner, whatever we have to let go of, we're getting upgraded. That loss, of course, yes, we need to mourn it and move through it. But if we can trust it and get to the other side, we're being given a much more authentic and divine true love experience of ourselves. And I think people are just so into holding on so tightly to the old paradigm that regardless of where it's coming from that is causing the lungs or the breath to be compromised, well, we're needing to be activated by the breath of life, by breathing deeply, by connecting with the earth. And so, I feel unconsciously or consciously, because grief affects the lungs, that really what people are going through is a mourning process of the old paradigm, that old identity. And if we can shed that old identity of the old paradigm and move forward to step into our soul essence and our true spiritual bodies, we'll realize that, we are given the opportunity to inform the personality matrix and our ego self of who we truly are, instead of being limited to the programmings that determine if we're successful or if we're failures, if this was good or bad choice, if we should sit in guilt or regret, or, feel, we got it all right and we have all the answers. I mean, that's just really not where it's at. This greater essence is opening up that is so much deeper and more meaningful, to the point where we lose judgment and we find compassion for ourselves. And I always like to reiterate, just like you said, Paula, we win the war within ourselves. We are snapping the cords that addict us to this matrix, so that we can form a relationship between our ego self and the multidimensional. And the physical container is only going to be able to shift in accordance with that. And whatever symptoms come along with it, we can be encouraged by instead of in fear of, because ultimately, we are going to be presented with a choice. Are we going to be in the weaponized ascension symptoms, or are we going to embrace the symptoms that come along with it and understand it to the point where we can unlock the keys to penetrate and fulfill, bring that greater unconditional love into our body, so that the grief that our lungs is holding becomes an openness to a greater ability to take a deep, deep breath and breathe in life, and don't be afraid of it. So we just have to break that cycle, because everything's being weaponized. All these initiations are being weaponized. And if we can get out of that cycle, all these challenges are a blessing.
Yeah. Go ahead, Nina.
I love, absolutely. And the message that's come in for me recently, and I wrote a song about it too, is it's the difference between falling in love and rising in love. Because when we're rising in love, we're going up the octave scale of ascension. Falling in love is going down the scale. It's the inversion. So we're relearning how to love again. Because how we were taught to love was a slave, emotionally, I'm going to hold you hostage type of love. That is not love. That is abuse. So the majority of people are walking around thinking that love is abuse, and that's actually abuse, and we need to start calling it what it is. Love is something entirely different. That's been a huge, just like the core of what has been coming into me recently, is that's what's happening to us, and being gentle with the fact that as we're learning to love again in these new ways, as we're learning what rising in love is, how does that affect our relationships? How does that affect marriages? How does that affect dating? How does that affect sexuality? I know that's where I'm at with all of this right now is, wow, we can just put everything that we were taught aside and turn to our inner beings and let our inner galactic self start to guide us in this way. Because the more that I love and care about myself, and I'm in the spirit with myself, I'm in the spirit with you. And the more that I love my heart. I love your heart. And I don't want to hurt you. I want to be sensitive. I want to be gentle. You're my brother and my sister first. You're a part of me. So I feel like it's this whole new consciousness that we're starting to step into with each other. And there's tenderness there. We're like little kids in the sandbox. Like, we went really far in one direction, you know, we went really far. And so now we're kind of going in this really far other direction. And I feel like we're going to find this balance within all of it.
Yeah, this new energy you're talking about is really, really soft. Like it's really soft and palpable and soothing. Like I probably have very poor words to try to explain. How do you explain the unexplainable, right? Like, how do you do that? It's really
That's
hard.
the 5D energy that you're talking about, the 5D New Earth energy, because it is heart-centered.
So
I think another way to sort of align with that is to see everything that happens as an opportunity for something and allow it to come within you. It's easy to judge what's happening to you in the way that we've been taught. As Laura was saying, it's easy to judge something like the loss of a job, or with me recently going to hospital and getting the so-called C or whatever. It's easy to judge that. It's easy to sit there and say, why is this happening to me? Why am I being put into this position where I have to make this terrible choice between my job or the thing? Or I could have said, why me? Why did I have to go to hospital when I've done all of these, spiritual healing exercises? Why did this happen? For me, and I know everyone here, we've had many years to sort of learn to navigate this. So automatically, I found myself, I didn't really necessarily analyze, I found myself going into this place, which is very much, this is where I am. What is the opportunity here? What do I learn from this? And it wasn't even an analysis, it was an automatic surrender. But I think people who are just coming into this consciousness, it's going to be easier for them to see what they might have judged as something bad, something awful, something terrible, something unthinkable, to judge that as an opportunity, because it's having the faith and the trust of what lies beyond that when you stand in integrity. As Laura was saying, this is pretty much what she was saying. We have a beacon of light that's been showing us this. Novak, I don't know whether I can say his full name on here, but Novak, the tennis player, you know, he could have so easily have just done what they wanted and gone and played his game and won the game and held his title. But the principles, the knowing, the alignment with what is right for him, his body, and everything about his reality, there is no choice. Your choice point, which is given to you as a choice to make, there is no choice to make when you get to that place when you're in alignment, because you made the choice before you were even born. You stand on that choice point and become one with it, which is what Novak did, and played it and navigated it through as best as he could. Now, many see that as a very negative thing, obviously, when they're on the other side of the narrative. But for people like us, we'll see that as him standing in his sovereignty. Now, it may look like, for him as an example, his reality has just presented himself as a failure. And you have all these tabloids all over the world in every country saying what a big failure he is. But that's the false narrative. That's the inversion, because in truth, he's a winner, he's a hero, he's a beacon. And I think what's going to wake people up is not necessarily, say, him, but the situation. Because it'll be, well, you've got this bunch of people over here saying, oh, that was a failure, that was a mistake. Why are these people seeing him as a hero or seeing this as a good opportunity, and they're seeing him as a winner? I mean, this story hasn't played out yet. He is on the winning timeline, regardless of what occurs to him. And that will play out in the coming weeks and months when we see how things go. But I think people are looking at us and thinking, well, why do those people think like that? Now, some of them who are so buried in the false narrative will just instantly move into the question, why do you think that way? I have tried to understand you and I can't understand you. And they stay in the why, as if the why itself is justification for you not being like that. But what happens when they take that just a little bit of a step further and actually start to think, why are these people thinking this way? What is it that they're seeing that I am not seeing? And it's a very small movement. And when they can move into that and actually look at this large collective that's much larger than most people realize, who are stuck in that false narrative, then, and many of those people in our new earth alignment are doctors, nurses, surgeons, medical individuals. You know, are they all anti this, that, and the other? Are they all false? Are they all spouting misinformation? Or do they know something? Because as our collective grows stronger and stronger and stronger in that unity, we present a huge group, and it can't be ignored anymore. And I feel that, again, is another huge play out and strong energy for this year, 2022.
So beautifully said, because the real true definition of intelligence is that you don't dismiss any perspective. You'll have a listen to all of them and you dismiss none. And you appreciate every viewpoint and perspective. That's the true definition. But what we find, unfortunately, is many are so close-minded for whatever reason. They won't, you know, they'll hear an idea of something new and dismiss it before they even understand anything about it, which is unfortunate. Right? Practically speaking, you know, I think step one is you've got to mind your mind. You have to get your thinking in order so that you can move to the heart, unplug, and then your wisdom and guidance, as everybody knows here and everybody that's listening. That's when you know what step to take next, no matter what you're being faced with. It's, you know, it feels like you could even be faced with like a big demon or whatever. And it's like, oh, I love you, you know, and it turns into a little puppy.
That's literally what happens.
Yeah, yeah.
I've talked to many demons and devils, and it's funny because they literally say, well, if you don't want your power, my job is just to sweep it up, you know. And human beings either give their power up to something that they think is separate to them, and they give it a name of an entity, and that's where they give their power. This will rescue me, this will save me, or they disown their power and drop it on the floor, and then the other guy from underneath comes up and sweeps it up. That's literally their job. They're like, if you don't want it, we'll take it, but you can have it back at any time, just ask.
Yeah.
And you say, I love you, and they're not some big scary thing. I don't know if somebody was talking about the TV show Lucifer the other day.
Oh, it was me. I'd mentioned that it was on Times Square in New York City in the big, huge Jumbotron. And it was a picture of that. And it was talking about Grammys. Yeah. I hope they remember to thank me for their fame and fortune or something to that effect. Right in Times Square.
Funny. It's quite funny.
Is
really.
that any good? Is it good?
If you actually watch the show, it's hilarious. Oh, no, I've watched the whole series. It's hilarious. And it's brilliant. I think personally, depends which eyes you view things through, right? And the way I view it, I just thought it was brilliant and funny, because actually there's this part in it, and I wanted to video it, where he's in his, you know, he's full in his demonic wings and his demon face, and he's really freaking out because he's in love with this normal girl, and he has to actually forgive himself. And then he gets his normal white wings back.
Wow.
Like the devil forgives himself for being evil. And he's like, everyone blames me and it's not my fault. Like they... I mean,
they do a really good job because it does look like he's very handsome and very charming, and they add all the comedy and the humor. And it
depends which lens you view it through, I think. Yeah. But at the end of the day, if we're scared of something, we're going to give it power.
Exactly.
Right. So if you're going to be scared of something that's presenting a fearful, powerful image of itself, just like in the Wizard of Oz with the little, you know, the wizard projecting on the wall with all the big flames, and it's like, you are not worthy, and you do, you know, and there's just this little guy behind a curtain turning a handle, projecting that image onto the wall. So there's actually nothing to be afraid of. It's like you were saying, we only feed that when we keep giving our power away and being in fear. And so anytime you just want to choose and go, you know what, do I want to be in fear? Do I want to give my power away? I don't think so. I'm going to have it back. Because what we were talking about as well, Magenta, whatever's going on in the narrative, you know, and yes, things are coming down. And I think there's it is falling. It is unraveling like a woolly jumper. And you can go, there's a line of undone. And it's like, yay, another line. It's going to take time. But whichever way, even when everything's starting to unravel, what are we left with? Because we've lived and been dependent, like been dependent on the pain body. We've been dependent upon systems which we think have supported us. And bit by bit, and I think it's going to take probably 10, 20 years for them all to come down personally, because there's a lot of it. It goes deep and far and wide. And so as all of it comes down, what are you going to cling to then? Because you can celebrate and go, yes, we're collapsing the system, but then what? You're going to have, unless you actually have yourself centered in your own truth and your own power and know in here what's real and right and good, and you're listening and being guided by your own heart and your own higher self, your own sovereign power, your own source, your own, inner God, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter which part of the game you're playing in, because ultimately all roads go that way.
Yes.
So even if, and what you were saying, Nina, is that the ultimate thing is we don't really have a choice, because you do have a choice, and yet sooner or later it's going to end up the same way anyway. We all have to come back here, and that's the long game. So.
Wow. And celebration, if you're always in a state of celebration, you're not waiting to celebrate the outer reality. That's part of it, but you are in a celebratory state all the time, simply for your life. And if you have opportunities in your life that show you that you might have lost your life, as I said, I've gone through something similar, it takes you even more into a celebratory alignment through the gratitude of continuing the life that you thought perhaps you might not continue with. So that in itself is hugely celebratory. And the starseeds who are in alignment with this ascension timeline, this new earth 5D reality, they are always in that celebratory state, no matter what's happening outside. I'm not saying bad things don't happen, because obviously, as Laura was saying, this is touching us all. This hijack, this attack, if you will, is touching us all. But that inner state of celebration of life is there within the starseeds, because they have that flowing energy. They don't have anything blocking them. They haven't had to move into a choice. They've taken a choice point as a natural movement. There's been no choice for them, because they've always known what they would say if ever faced with that, because they're on an ascension timeline. They're not going to move into anything that takes them off that path. Now, every single starseed that holds that celebratory frequency within them is creating the timeline all the time. And that's been going on for a long time, and that's ramping up more and more and more. So when we're looking at the positive sides of this, that's where it's to be found, I feel.
Oh, totally. Nina, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I love
welcome back, Connor. I know.
I just want to say about the Lucifer and the demon thing. It's like seeing it as, okay, well, what are these demons driving me towards? Like any client that I work with who's being attacked by demons, or what's really awesome, and I always try to look at the positive of everything. That's how I'm built, is it brought you to this moment in time. So those spiritual demons or Lucifer challenging you is showing up to show you where you're giving your power away, where you're living more in fear than you are in faith. And there are times when I do believe, and I know I experienced in my own life, God allowed me to really walk into that and to really get those strong lessons so that I would grow tremendously in my faith, to be able to do what I'm doing now, and so on and so forth. And it's also being grateful for the people, like you're talking about the show Lucifer, and I can't believe I'm going to say this out loud, but I'm going to say it. I was going to say, I don't need to watch that show because I dated enough of those characters, but that was because I was looking to give my power away. I was looking for someone. I had daddy issues. I was looking for someone to say, oh, you're wonderful. I see you. I was giving that power outside of myself. That's my responsibility. So they played their role perfectly and they helped me grow up. And it's coming from that new perspective of even seeing what's happening right now as these players, these black hat players are playing their role perfectly to get us to see where we've been giving our power away, to take it back, to become sovereign again, to walk in faith, and to grow up more than we ever have. They're basically making us stronger. So they're pushing us into the ascension in a way. And that might sound crazy to see it that way, but that is an entirely different way of seeing it. Okay, go ahead.
I think you would think it was funny because actually one of the themes throughout the show is that he has daddy issues and he goes to see a psychotherapist. So he's always going to this healer who's giving him advice. And in the end, he ends up making peace with his dad and he loves him again.
That's funny.
Go ahead,
And
Laura.
it's
It
like,
is true.
you
Sorry,
can
it
do
is true what you say, Nina. That is true what you said about them pushing us into the ascension timeline. It's just that so few people understand that concept. So because there's so much else to look at there.
Yeah.
People think that if you see that perspective, then you are completely accepting what they're doing and utterly forgiving them and allowing them to do what they're doing. No, absolutely not. And I've spoken about this quite a lot, but it's true what you say, as long as that perspective is taken with the sovereign declaration and everything else. Well, I know we all know that, but I've said things like you've just said and had, again, terrible backlash from that. And perhaps I shouldn't listen to the negative backlash that I get, but I do. I feel invested in every person who has a voice, who says something to me about, and I know that some of them are, trolls and they're doing it deliberately to sort of bring you down, but there are genuine people who followed my work and have, read my books and seen my videos. And when they get upset, it does upset me. I don't want to upset them, but what more can you do than be as truthful as you possibly can and explain the concepts that you hold awareness of in as clear a way as you possibly can. And if that is misunderstood, then you have to kind of take a step back and just send unconditional love, but not allow yourself to be involved anymore in that person's, journey. But I'm seeing that happening with every spiritual teacher right now, no matter what they're putting out, because everyone's waking up and becoming their own spiritual teacher. They're all becoming their own leader, their own guru. They don't need gurus and spiritual teachers anymore. But in that process, they're all coming into their own sovereign paradigm or template. And that paradigm or template is going to be slightly different to the person next to them. Yeah. And so in each one of them is vying for the righteousness of their paradigm, if you will, and to have it validated. And that is part of the journey, but that isn't the way we're going to move to New Earth and 5D, the Ascension timeline. It is through unity, our uniqueness, but coming together in a unified sense, which is what you said, Paula. See all perspectives, allow all perspectives. Once we're all there, then there is nothing for that dark structure to feed on anymore. Yeah. There is nothing for them to have. When we are all there, they cannot touch us.
Mm-hmm. And we're moving there. Go ahead, Laura.
And we totally are. It's just really incredible. I mean, just as you guys were talking, I'm just thinking about the archetype of, the devil. I mean, obviously we have this energy within ourselves and our relationship to power, to ego, to also outer authority. How do we relate to outer authority? So we're raised in the system, we're raised by our parents, and we have some sort of authority we answer to. But when that authority is abusive or narcissistic or controlling, then we're sort of like captive. And like you were saying, Nina, the need for approval, and all that kind of stuff sort of comes into the mix to the point where you're almost like serving that outer authority and hoping to be rewarded by it. And so there's varying degrees of it. I mean, the school system is set up this way where if we perform this way, we'll get A's and we'll get a degree and we'll graduate and we'll have all these
things that make us feel good about ourselves because we answer to authority. But then there's abusive authority that we're trying to remove ourselves from to find our own, self-validation on deeper levels. And so our relationship with authority is so much about that devil archetype. Are we enslaved by the need for that approval to answer to something and be able to perform in a way that gives us a sense of, oh, I succeeded or I did it right. So Saturn being connected with Capricorn and success and the baby steps it takes to create success, isn't all evil, but it has to do with our relationship with it. So when we become the authority, are we a tyrannical authority? Are we a control freak? Or are we holding authority that is based in the law of structure that connects with cosmic and natural law, where the greater authority has to do with the organic corrections that life gives us, the events that we manifest in our lives to help us to get back to center, where we're answering to the authority of a greater, structure that's on a just like nature level, it's encoded in nature. And so the Saturn moon matrix and the whole relationship of the masculine and feminine, how that's like been circulating throughout our systems, has been not about being the protector. It's been about being the control freak. So that masculine archetype has, been so inverted, to the point where the redemption of Lucifer and the redemption of the negative ego is for us to break the chains and, realize, we can turn that pentagram around and bring in that like flow of energy to restructure the way we relate to the masters.
Mhm.
In turn, we become self-mastery. And all these different obstacles are giving us an opportunity to gain self-mastery instead of being kind of like held in those, like you said, daddy issues, or I need approval, or I need to answer to this. When behind the curtain, like you said with the Wizard of Oz, it's just our own negative ego that's like becoming so monstrous that we don't have to see the failure and success. We can accept both the negative and positive and appreciate the gift that both gives to begin to integrate that polarity, to blossom out of like, this imbalanced structure, which is the patriarchal program. So the Christ Sophia divine template is birthed when that bond is broken. And to me, that's what redeems Lucifer and takes it out of the false light, because it's no longer harvesting and siphoning our energies because we want to please it and it wants to control us. And that to me are archetypes that we have to reconcile within ourselves.
Yeah, how we were beautifully said, for sure. How we were talking about angels and demons and Lucifer and how they're really helping us on our path. On Gaia TV, there's Initiation with Matthias DiStefano. And I don't remember what season it is, but he actually talks about how the angels and demons work together. And if I can remember this correctly, it's kind of like the angel has a chat with the demon and says, I've been trying to get a message to her, but she's just not listening. I've tried this, I've tried that. And the demon's like, all right, no worries. I'll get the message to her. And then all of a sudden, bam, a car accident happens or something happens. And it's like, okay, high five. We got the message to her. She's back on the path that she wanted. I've probably completely mangled the way that he explained it, but it's basically, I haven't mangled it.
It's perfect. Because the analogy I would give is a magnet. You have a positive and a negative end. And because of the positive and negative, there's so much power in the center of that magnet, and it creates a field around the negative and a field around the positive, which is actually an infinity loop between the two. They're not actually polar ends of a spectrum. They're actually in a figure of 8 like this. They move like that. And then each, because of the center point in the center, it creates another polarity of another positive and negative field. So you've got the second infinity. So it's a double infinity kind of helix, I suppose. I don't know what you call that, in a magnet. And the center of power is a tiny, weeny little point right in the middle. And it defies all gravity. It defies all laws of physics. And it just holds its own power there and can be magnified. And it's complete and utter harmony and unity with the negative and the positive, the good and the bad. You need both to generate power. You can't have a battery run on a positive and a positive. You won't get any power out of it. Yeah. So it's like it's nothing to be feared or even worshipped. It just is.
Yeah.
And just like we talked about sacred neutrality on one of our videos before, and it's like, and that sacred neutrality for me is, that's the same feeling as unconditional love or that pure water you're drinking. It's just,
It's been blessed.
It's just bliss. It's beautiful. And you
I got on my chalkboard right now. I drew an atom and I said, be like a proton, always positive.
That's cute.
Be like a proton. So I'm just looking at the time and being respectful because it's getting quite late in the UK and in France. So do we want any last messages before we wrap up, and then don't go when we stop recording? Anybody want any last? Laura.
Oh, well, it's been hard to kind of gather my thoughts and like express what I want to say. So I hope whatever I shared came out all right. I feel this is just going to be an unbelievable year, and everything is, it's when they say God wins, I mean, I just feel like it's like us saying our higher self wins. The greater good within ourself wins, because we're not going to allow our lower self or our lower ego or our fears or our anxieties, and when we go through those dark places, that doesn't dominate. That's just a part of the process. That's part of the initiation. We visit those places, but they don't dominate. They don't rule. We don't make choices from those places. We're learning not to make choices from those places. So the reason God wins is because our higher self wins. Wisdom wins. The lantern, that light that we find in the darkness that illuminates when we feel there's no direction, you know, that's the crone, the wisdom that is growing, that wins, because that is the organic cycle. It's encoded in nature. And so that's an inevitable victory. We just have to keep reminding ourselves, because we're the micro version of what's happening in the larger picture. And whatever we're witnessing outside of ourselves, you know, it's an opportunity for us to reclaim our treasures and not be further victimized by, you know, any of what we're seeing. And no matter how much of a rut we get ourselves into, or how much we're compromised on a physical level, or even if we have to be hospitalized, even if we get injured, or our closest friend or loved one lets us down or dies, or there's a breakup or a loss of a job, you know, these are upgrades. So an upgrade means there's a release of something to embrace the next level of its expression. And so when we lift the veil between life and death, we'll recognize that you can't ever separate love. No matter whether it's in the physical or not, it doesn't matter. Love is the multidimensional, and it exists in life and death and beyond. And once we remove the fear of death, we've lifted that veil, and we can embrace much more that's coming in. And I could keep rambling. It's like, my website's cosmicguides.org. And Magenta, can you check your Telegram? I need to have a one-on-one conversation with you at some point here.
Thank you, Laura. That was beautifully said.
And thank you so much, you guys. So wonderful to meet you guys. My goodness.
Wow.
It's lovely.
So lovely.
May I say something about this initiation? It feels really, really strong. So I want to say as well to everybody watching, don't believe history. Don't believe what you've read in books and what you've been told about history and what's real and what isn't real. Because there is, again, so much rubbish out there to distract and elude you. And so I was thinking a lot about the ancient Egyptian initiation, that we've all been taught that when they wanted to transit from one life to the next life, or from one state of being to another state of being, from a solid third dimensional state of being to a fifth dimensional state of being, or a dense carbon structure to a crystalline structure, right? Whichever way you believe, that they believed, that history has told us that when these people died, they put their most treasured belongings in the sarcophagus with them, because they wanted to bring them with them to the afterlife. And that's actually not true. And I can speak with real certainty on this and real experience in this, because I was there, that actually it was about leaving behind your most treasured possessions, that which you think, oh, I could let go of this and I could surrender to that, but this I'm clinging on to, this I can't bear not bringing with me to the next life. You know, those things that you just don't want to part with, those are the things that went into the sarcophagus with these pharaohs, kings and queens, because it stays with the human realm. To leave it in the coffin. So it's actually completely inverted. We're told something over and over again that isn't true, that reinforces a false fear matrix that we've been programmed with. It's not true. It's easy to leave, because when you can let go of that which you most treasure, and even if it's life itself, like you were saying, Magenta, about being in hospital, and you have to go, I really love my life. I love my family. I don't want to lose them or my friends. And yet I'm going to have to leave this attachment here for me to be able to transition and move into the next level of my being, into the next state of my awakening, into the journey of real bliss, real embodiment, real self-actualization. That has to be let go of. And the moment you do, that's when the transition happens. But it doesn't mean that you kind of arrive on the other side empty-handed and having left everything behind you and you're in grief, because that's part of the initiation. Because if you can let go of what you most cling to, what you're most attached to, truly, genuinely, it's almost like you get more of that which you love once you've let go of what you're attached to through pain. Because if you lose it, you'll be in pain. And you actually get more of what you truly love when you can let go of all of that. And it's mind-blowing how that works, but it just does work. So that's my message I want to leave everybody with today who's watching, is don't be afraid of letting go even your most treasured self-identity. You know, whether it's your pain or something else, or whether it's a family member, or whether it's how you think the world works, what shape you think the world in, what you think happened in history, what you think this is all about. Trust me, it's all going to go. Every single little bit of it that has never been true will go, because only truth can get cleaned away. What is true remains. So what is actually really real and really true for every single one of us, we actually get more of that, we don't lose it. That's my piece. Thank you.
Thank you. Nina or Magenta, would you like to say some? Go ahead, Nina.
I just say that everything Tara said, that is an experience that's coming to all of us, if it hasn't already, in various ways. That's the initiation.
Yep.
If you want to move into 5D and go through this ascension and go through Stargate ascension, then that everything Tara just said, that is what you will experience on the physical level. The letting go, the surrender, and as you let go, you draw it back to you in its energetic form without this ego aspect of the human. It comes back to you in a flow, in a frequency. So you become even closer to the things that you love the most, that you had to surrender to not having, that you had to let go of. It comes even closer to you in an energetic form. And that's part of this alchemical unification. And that's why we're all going through this in this really separate, unique way. And that's why often we can think to ourselves, I must be the only person on the planet that's going through this right now. But then you realize the greater picture. And no, we're all going through it, every single one of us, in various different ways. And we can, it's going to touch us all, and we can ride it smoothly together in unity with all the spiritual tools that we have to do so. Or if we're on the other side of that play out, where there's an ignorance to those higher spiritual truths, then it's very difficult for those individuals. It's continuous strife and suffering. And as Tara was saying earlier on in our talk about unplugging, once you unplug, it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, I don't know about any of you, but I can honestly say that the last 2 years, whilst it's extremely challenging, I have been through a process of unconditional love and connection and joy. I haven't lost my joy. I haven't lost my bliss. Even in hospital, I still had that joy and bliss, even while I was in physical pain. So that's always there for you. It isn't necessarily an emotion. It's a frequency that you allow to align with. You allow yourself to align with it, and you allow it to flow through you. and that's there for everybody. It doesn't mean that you won't get any challenges. It doesn't mean that this reality isn't going to be difficult and that things won't happen. It just means that your perception of them and your experience of them will be different, and then you can actually gather riches through that. And as Laura said, I could waffle on as well, so I'll be quiet now, just to say thank you, Paula, for getting us all together today. It's been really nice.
That was lovely. Thank you, Magenta. Nina?
Well, when I tuned into 2022, the overall template that I saw was divine union, but in the understanding that it's the divine union within. And it's the shifting from the Luciferian, Lilith, masculine, feminine inversions, if you will, archetypes that we've all been playing out and taught to play out together, which would be like the falling in love, that would be shifting through this 2022 period, very much so in those of us who hold the divine union codes as the star seeds, carrying those codes and signatures, those master keys, into the Magdalene Christ consciousness divine union template. And that it's through this awakening within us that the Stargate ascension happens through our heart Stargate. So I am seeing a lot of this happening through the star seeds, a lot of new understandings of forgiveness for the masculine and feminine shadow roles that we've played, the archetypes that we've cycled through, rather than blaming each other, and then stepping up and allowing those to come into the light, to mature, to grow up. And it's been very interesting with this Venus retrograde, because it's brought up a lot of the shadow aspects of the Venusian aspects in the masculine and the feminine, relatable to love, relatable to romance, and bringing those. I know a lot of the work I've been doing is really sitting with both of those masculine, feminine energies within myself, allowing those archetypes to speak, allowing them to communicate with each other, to bring that then into this wholeness of love, of unconditional love. And understanding that we've all been hurt. We've all hurt each other. We've all played those roles. So can we just forgive, and through that forgiveness, allow the transmutation to rise and to come back home into that oneness space of Mother, Father, God within us, and the original expression of divine masculinity and divine femininity as expressed through those polarities that then can dance through us and are reaching for each other through us, activating our heart stargates so they can literally make love through us in this tantric manner and activate the stargate ascension through our bodies, giving birth to these new timelines. We are literally, they are making love through us. And we have the ability, we are birthing as stargates, these timelines, these frequencies, these codes. We're all very pregnant right now.
Thank you, Nina. And the only thing I would like to say, remind everybody, is fear is a liar. Fear is an absolute liar. Mind your mind. And you must trust that this wave of change is lifting us to higher shores. We must trust. Trust is such a huge piece right now. And with that said, I'm so grateful that we got together. I thoroughly enjoyed being with you today. I do hope that everybody that tuned in and gets to hear this, that it lifts your spirit, it opens your heart, and provides you with the most hope and love that you deserve as well. So I'm going to stop recording now. We'll see you guys soon.